Yes, everybody. Hope you're all doing fantastically well. A much different setting. We are back here with the debrief. It's bright out here. It's dark down there. But listen, we're all here talking about Leeds United, and we're back here with another episode. Today, I'm joined by my esteemed guest, as always, Oscar Marriott. Gabe, unavailable this day, unfortunately. But please stop like on the video, everybody. As you can tell, we're out, or I am out here in Miami anyway, trying to get a bit more content for you guys. If you've not checked out the Tampa Bay stuff, make sure you do so. Well worth it. We've got bits going on throughout the week. Follow us on TikTok, follow us everywhere else as well. Well, let's get into it. Mr. Marriott, how on earth are you doing, my friend?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. A lot brighter where you are than where I am, to be honest, in the sunny Southport, especially in November. Always well known for its sun in Southport, and I trust it's a rare good day in Miami. I'm sure. I'm sure it's been gloomy apart from this very video. The whole time you've been there.
I've realised with this top on, I look like a cross between Mike Garella and Megan Rapinoe. So yeah, mate. But it is. I have to say, it's not too bad out here, mate. It's not too bad. But as I say, it's only been a week away, mate. Sometimes you need it, don't you? How on earth are you, my friend? All good?
I'm good. Before anyone starts asking, I might just do the elephant in the room. This isn't a midlife crisis. I am doing Movember, by the way, guys. I'm doing Movember. I'm not having a midlife crisis or anything like that. Freddie Mercury tribute acts, things like that. So get your jokes out of the way early doors. But yeah, this is for Movember. It's for a good cause, guys. It's horrifying to look at, but it is for a good cause.
Do you know what, mate? You're in the dark that much. I'm not sure people can tell. Also, you haven't got a hat on either, so I think you're winning at this moment in time. But
that's what I mean. See, the one week I don't wear the hat, it causes problems. That should be better.
Paul says immediately straight into it. Connor, what about this? Apparently, LUFC have been bought by American global sports company called the Fanatics, who partner with UFC, PGA, F1, MLS, WWE. From what I understand, Oscar, I think they've announced it, haven't they? It's more of like next year, is it? I don't know if the 49ers have been bought out. It doesn't look like that. It looks more like a partnership between the two.
Yeah, I don't think it's like full on ownership by the looks of things. Obviously, it's early days. There's not really been much said about it, but it looks more like a partnership for next season. Hopefully, kind of like preparing for Premier League football potentially. That kind of deal you don't really see done as a Championship club. So yeah, we'll see. But it's an interesting one. I imagine Fanatics. I don't know tons about them, but seem pretty big. To be fair, I mean that's one way of putting it.
Yeah, I've heard about them. I've definitely heard about them. Yeah, from what I understand, they're relatively big. Well, they will be, won't they? So it might be. I don't know if they're taking shares over when it comes to Leeds, or I'm not 100% sure, to be honest with you. Jonathan says Fanatics are commercial partners, not owners. I thought that's what it was, to be honest. It didn't seem like a takeover / thing, but it seems like it's probably a similar vibe to Red Bull, really, isn't it, Oscar? In terms of just coming in and helping the overall sort of aesthetic of the club and investing in that way.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, we've gone from being Red Bull Leeds to Leeds United Fanatics, and so which one's it going to be? Is it Red Bull Leeds playing at the Red Bull Arena, or Leeds United Fanatics playing at the Fanatics Arena? Which one is it, guys?
You think Leeds United instead of Ellen Road, sort of like the Fanatic Ellen Road? Do you reckon the Fanatic Ellen Road with the new rebranding of the stadium? I don't think it's very American, that, isn't it? The Fanatic Ellen Road. Yeah,
I'd rather not, to be honest, mate. I'd rather not think about Ellen Road being renamed that. It's the Red Bull Arena, Fanatic Ellen Road, Red Bull Land Road.
Any more?
I'm trying to think of any more.
Get them in the chat, everyone, if you can think of any more. Right, Leeds United. Still, Oscar, I have to say, the title of this is outside the outside the top two still. I'd love to be inside the top two for more than maybe 10 hours. That'd be quite nice, wouldn't it, at this moment in time? Obviously, Leeds bowing out to another Sheffield United win, it has to be said. I think they're doing all right at this moment in time, aren't they, Oscar? It's been Blackburn, Bristol City, and Sheffield Wednesday, 3 wins on the bounce. Sunderland stuttering a little bit, which is good. I think that's 2 draws on the bounce, isn't it? Joe Bellingham will be there in the next couple of games. How are you seeing it at the minute? Are you sort of, are Leeds on track? Are Leeds underperforming? Are Leeds overperforming? How's it going at the minute?
Yeah, I mean, it sums up the season so far, really. Frustrating. It has been a frustrating season. I don't think we can say it's been bad because we are ultimately, not far off our goals at this moment in time. I think we are still just about on course, but I think it's a lot tighter than what it should be at this moment in time. I think really the opportunity has been there for us to really pull clear at this early part in the season. Obviously with Sunderland starting to slow up a little bit. Sheffield United, they put together 3 wins on the bounce, but we did have a 2-point head start in the first place on Sheffield United, which is worth pointing out there. And it's somewhat of a good job, really, in some ways, in this early part of the season, because Sheffield United would have a decent little lead at this moment in time if they did have those 2 points back. But yeah, it's one of those, really, mate. I think that you said it yourself there. Sheffield United put 3 wins together on the bounce. We've not done that once all season, which is not good enough. That's the one word for it. And yes, you can say we're consistent because over the last 18 months, we've averaged 2 points a game. But other than that kind of run from sort of January through to sort of mid-March last season, we haven't really put together those kind of runs of games where you win 4 or 5 on the bounce. And ultimately, that's what bothers me a lot more than sort of like the style of... I mean, the style of football has been discussed a lot, and I'm sure we will probably talk about that at some point in this one as well. But I think ultimately it's the inconsistency. It's too many Bristol City aways and too many Millwall aways. It shouldn't be a case of that Millwall game. I don't know if you had the same feeling, mate, but I had that feeling that if we don't score first in this game, we're going to come away with nothing kind of thing. And you shouldn't have that feeling with this Leeds team ever, really, with the quality we've got. Even with Ramazani out, other injuries elsewhere, you should never have that feeling that Leeds won't be able to get back into a game or win any game, really, at this level. So it's definitely been frustrating. I think we are batting below our average at this moment in time, but not massively enough for it to be a big concern. It's just been really underwhelming, really, in terms of what we can be. I thought we were actually quite good against QPR. I thought it was a good, certainly first half. I thought it was similar to Plymouth, really. We just didn't take our chances. But that's the thing. It's just not consistently being able to put either 3 or 4 really good performances together in a row or 3 or 4 wins together in a row. We're not really found that consistency yet, and that's the frustration.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on this as well. Lou Owens, who I know me and you follow on social media as well.
Yeah, brilliant account.
Very, very good account. Watford fan, definitely worth a follow. Championship midfielders this season for progressive actions, defensive output, possession adjusted. Remember, team quality to play a big part, and the overriding things is Tanaka's a monster. Watford obviously don't have a midfield, but I just wanted to point out here as well, when you look at progressive midfielders, which sort of illustrates the balance, doesn't it, Oscar? When you look at Tanaka, who can pretty much do everything, it's key to note this man down here as well.
Yeah, it's
Rothwell in terms of progressive midfielders as well, which I guess is kind of Rothwell's job, looking at almost the second best at that, way behind Aidan Hackney, who I know me and you rate very highly. But, when you look at this group, obviously you've got some of the standouts here, but Tanaka obviously being the huge standout monster at everything. Greven Ampadu kind of in the similar vein here, which maybe shows of which, I don't know, Oscar, when you're looking at this graph in particular, maybe it's too similar. I don't know. Ball winners can do a lot of everything, but mostly on that side front, really. But when you look at Rothwell and Tanaka there, it's a really nice balance, isn't it? That's what we've established so far this season, I'd say.
It is, and I think it's been our most entertaining when we've had Rothwell and Tanaka in the team together. And I think, I think we'll come on to him as well. But Ramazani, I think when you got Rothwell, Tanaka, Ramazani, those runs beyond to create more space for Tanaka and Rothwell, and for Tanaka and Rothwell to feed the ball into, especially Rothwell. He was combining really well with Ramazani down that left-hand side, and obviously Junior Firpo as well. So I think the thing is with this Leeds team is when we've got our strongest 11 or close to our strongest 11 on the pitch, I think our performances have actually been really good. If you look at Coventry at home, Norwich away, Sheffield United at home, Sunderland away, that's kind of 4-game spell of games where you had that favoured left side on the pitch, Tanaka and Rothwell in the team. I think we have actually looked really good in those games. And you can even go back to pre-season when we kind of had, obviously it was different players at that point, but Farke ball, when it has got the ideal players in the team, it can work really well because we've seen that.
You were defending him quite a bit, weren't you? Or some of the tweets earlier on. I noticed that you think there's been a little bit of unfair criticism toward Daniel Farke. Why don't you try to elaborate on that? Because I know you've been a bit here and there with him. I mean, what is it right now that you think he's been heavily criticised for?
Yeah, I think what I will say is Farke doesn't go without criticism. I've actually got criticism of Farke in the fact that we aren't really making this look as comfortable as we should do at this moment in time. But I think that's different from the style of play. I think this style of play can be really good. I really do believe that when it's got the ideal players on the pitch. So you showed there in terms of Lou Owens' graphic, in terms of Tanaka and Rothwell, progressive passes. That's exciting to watch, in terms of having your midfield double pivot are both, amongst the most progressive passes in the whole division. That is good to watch for me.
Well, Oscar as well, just to add to that, mate, there's a lot of people who maybe question what Daniel Farke ball is. We saw it at Norwich, but it's definitely adapted. It feels like it's definitely adapted.
Yeah, of course.
With what it is at Leeds United right now. I think when you saw Ampadu and Gruev, he sort of slants a little bit more toward control, of which I feel like when there was Tribal, Vrancic, Tete in the midfield at Norwich, and obviously how that progressed, it felt a little bit more expansive and a little bit more Norwich would go hell for leather in most games. Why do you think that's changed with Leeds United, with better personnel and essentially a bigger budget as well?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because I think obviously Norwich in 2018, 2019 and Norwich in 2020, 2021, when they went up that second time around, obviously I personally saw, I don't know about you, mate, I saw a lot less of them in 2020, 2021.
Yeah,
but I definitely get the impression
we were in the Premier League, weren't we?
We were ninth then. It was the glory days of Rafinha and Marcelo Bielsa. But I think in that season as well, Norwich did kind of change the whole style. If you look at this statistically, it was only really Pukki scoring goals and Buendia having a free role. And after that, it was a lot more defensive orientated. But not like so much they were playing defensive football, but a lot more focused on kind of being compact out of possession. Obviously, you saw Oliver Skip sign for them. Tom Tribal start regularly. People like Vrancic get phased out at that point in terms of quite a box-to-box attack-minded midfielder. Kenny McLean coming in. Not the most exciting players in the world in terms of that midfield, but it kind of worked for him. And I think what you've seen with Leeds is that, what I was going to say about in terms of Rothwell and Tanaka, it's all well and good having progressive passes, but you need runners on the end of the passes. It's all well and good breaking the lines, but you haven't then got the speed to then or the ability to really expose teams when you can find those spaces in between the lines, because that's what effectively Tanaka and Rothwell do. They break the lines in terms of their passing, but you then got to have that player receiving the ball who can then manipulate the ball and make things happen from that. And I think when Ramazani's not on the pitch, I do think there's a big difference in Leeds, in terms of from being a really exciting attacking team and being quite a stale, boring, slow, methodical team. And I think as well, in terms of Solomon, he's a very different profile to Ramazani, total opposite of Ramazani. And it feels to me like for Farke ball to be at its best, you need pace on the wings. And I think obviously Gnonto I think is great. I really do like Gnonto. But I think if you've got Gnonto on one side, you need pace on the other side, because ultimately the attack becomes slow and stale. And I don't think that's by design so much. I think that's more because of the profile of players you have. It's all well and good trying to be a little bit more vertical and more direct, but if you haven't got the players to play that football, naturally it slows down.
I have to say, it's not like we need him as such, but it is, I was calling for it after Millwall, really. And there's something which doesn't sit right with me, Oscar, when with the amount of money that we've spent and how lucrative our squad is. There's just something that doesn't sit right with me when I'm turning around on stream and saying we missed Ramazani in that Millwall side. And I know, listen, your team could be built and structured around certain personnel. I understand that, but we shouldn't be needing Ramazani. I think Ramazani should almost be a bonus on top of this side. I think.
Yeah, of course.
Look, we've done what we've done against QPR, of course, and a win's a win. You can only beat the teams that are in front of you. But I have to say, we shouldn't even be, and it sounds arrogant, but I really don't care. These should be certified wins for Leeds United, guaranteed wins against teams like QPR at the foot of the table. They have to be guaranteed wins. But I think you sort of judge Leeds on that top eight, don't you? The top eight competition, really. And I think for me, in a sense, you're looking at, when Ampadu and Gruev went out, I was sort of okay with it. I think we're okay on the debrief as well, because we thought, look, we've got Tanaka, we've got Rothwell there. That potentially could work. We didn't have Gilavoggi at that point. But I am a little bit does irritate me a little bit that, we kind of are saying as maybe a fan base, it'd be great to have Ramazani. We sort of need Ramazani back in there now to provide that balance when it comes to X Factor.
Yeah, it's frustrating, and that's it says when I was defending Farke earlier in the week, it wasn't to say that he's without blame. There is definitely blame that can be laid on his door, but I focus more on the fact that as you say, we need the ideal conditions to really play well, and that doesn't sit right with me in terms of more towards sort of if we did go up, because in the reality is in the Premier League, most weeks we're not going to have better quality in the opposition. Probably 90% of the weeks we wouldn't do. We'd have to find different ways of winning other than just being better than the opposition in terms of technical quality. So that's definitely a concern to me. It shouldn't make such a difference to this Leeds team when Ramazani's not on the pitch or even a junior Firpo, because at the end of the day, Firpo isn't fit now. Well, sorry, not fit. It's suspended for the next 3 games. Next 2 games, but 3 games overall. Why is Isaac Schmidt not being integrated into the team sooner?
Let's touch on. We need to talk.
The options are on the pitch to make us still look good. So I do totally agree with you. That was the point I was trying to make. There is other options to Junior Firpo and Ramazani that can still make us fluid.
Well, we have to touch on Isaac Schmidt. I'm going to throw this one at you. Honestly, I think he wanted him.
Again, it's impossible to say because obviously it depends who has the main say on.
Well, I'm asking you. What do you reckon? What do you think?
I mean, when you look at people like Max Aarons getting linked, I think Max Aarons was probably the. This is only my opinion, by the way. I think Max Aarons is probably more Farke's choice, and Schmidt maybe more the club's choice. That's just opinion. Obviously we know Farke's got a relationship with Max Aarons in terms of really bringing him on as a player at Norwich. And obviously we know back in August 2023, that £12 million deal that was set up. And obviously Aarons has not been playing much at Bournemouth. Bogle maybe had a bit of a nifty start. And I think he really trusts Byram at left back. So, you can look at it from that and say, if Byram's still very much ahead of Schmidt in the pecking order, even at left back, then yeah, you can probably look at it and say maybe Farke wasn't that keen on Isaac Schmidt. Maybe it is another kind of Jadon Anthony type scenario, maybe.
Yeah, I think it points to that. I think it's pretty obvious because I think if he'd have come on the pitch, and we'd have looked at him and would have gone, oh yeah. But the two major factors here for me, Oscar, are availability, fitness, and quality. So he's been available most games because he's been on the bench, and then he comes onto the pitch at the weekend, and for me, on the ball, moving forward, and just from an availability standpoint, I thought he was very good in a very brief period, and we've had a lot of that this season. We have to say, the cameos that Leeds United have produced have been excellent. They've been very, very good. But for me, that stinks of him not wanting him in particular, and I don't know whether or not this is all assumption, it's all hypotheticals. But I just wonder whether or not it's been a little bit of a statement to leave him out the side, because with him being fit and with the quality that he displayed at the weekend, unless there is just an undeniable loyalty, which does happen in football, to Sam Byram, which is fine. But you looked at Schmidt, and don't get me wrong, I thought, listen, there was an inversion there, or a lot. Oscar wasn't there. Schmidt was getting the ball and moving the ball inside a lot, but he had a quickness, I thought, a sharpness of which Byram doesn't have. And I thought a couple of times you at least saw him attempt to go on that left-hand side and progress it forward, and you get a couple of 1-2s as well. And ultimately, let's be honest, he pretty much got an assist as well in the time that he was on. So yeah, just very, very interesting. I think it's worth discussing at least.
Yeah, 100%. And it could even be a Gruev situation from last season. We have to remember Gruev up until January hardly played. In fact, there was so many kind of like jokes about in terms of Gruev, in terms of, I think his only game at that first bit of the season in terms of starts was Stoke away when we lost that horrible game 1-0, where Bamford missed a penalty, and it was an absolute shocking game from Gruev, and it felt like, Gruev trusted.
But Oscar, the caveat for me there, I think we all expected that. That. I think Kamara and Ampadu were mainstays from day one, really. Then you obviously had the rotation of Archer, which none of us expected. Then he moved to right back. But I wasn't sure that when we'd just been obviously demoted from the Premier League, I think it was pretty obvious that Gruev was coming in as rotation, because Farke only ever played 2 double pivots. So the confusing one for me is Schmidt, because he was brought in on the last day as rotational cover for the fullbacks. That's where I'm really confused. I think Gruev, when he came to the United, it was pretty obvious. He was bought a little bit later on. I think it was pretty obvious.
And that doesn't bother me too much with Schmidt. His backup kind of thing, in terms of, I think Bogle and Firpo have had, I think Firpo especially has had a very strong season when he has been on the pitch. And when you look at Firpo's tendency to pick up a booking and an injury, probably it was wise to bring him back up in that kind of regard. But I do think when Firpo's not on the pitch, Schmidt should be ahead of Byram at left back. I do believe that. I think in terms of the left-hand side, without Ramazani, without Firpo, becomes not much happens down the left-hand side at all. I think the good thing with Schmidt as well is he's so two-footed. I noticed that straight away in terms of passing the ball off with his right, passing the ball off with his left, and it felt natural down that left-hand side when he did come on. And as you say, I think it was an assist. I know statistically it won't be classed as an assist, but it was as good as or as close as you can kind of come to an assist without it being one. And it was a really good performance from him. And we all instantly, nothing against Sam, I thought we instantly looked better down that left-hand side when Schmidt was on the pitch. I don't think there's any real question about that. And the same goes for Solomon as well. I think Schmidt did more in the attacking third than what Solomon did in the first 70 minutes, to be honest. And, that's quite alarming, really, in some ways, in terms of how we respond to Firpo or Ramazani not being in the team, because I think that's clearly going to be the favoured left side when they're both fit or available to play. I don't think there's any real question about that now, really, after the last couple of weeks. But I think it's a wider thing with this Leeds team in terms of, if Gnonto was out the team, what would we do with that? In terms of how would we respond to that? And I think that's been our biggest weakness all season, as being when we haven't had the ideal conditions on the pitch in terms of everyone being fit and everyone available. We haven't really been able to find the solutions very well. And that's frustrating because I think the solutions are there, but we kind of pick the wrong ones for me.
Definitely. Interesting when it's come from Rune here. Rune said, Joseph, disappointing so far. Need a new striker. I'm seeing this a lot, Oscar. For me, once again, we saw exactly what we were calling for at the start of the season. You have literally seen the solution work again the other day. Peru coming on, scoring, lovely little finish. Is he a better finisher than Joseph right now? You can't dispute that. You really can't. But why are we complaining about the method when the method's working? It doesn't make a lot of sense, does it?
No, I think it is working. I think Joseph did have a fairly quiet game on Saturday, but in terms of the system, I think in the first half he saw it worked quite well. In terms of Joseph was the only real player who was running in behind and making the space for Tanaka, Rothwell, and Gnonto to play into. Solomon doesn't really do that now. In terms of certainly since he's come back from the injury, I don't think his in terms of ability to burst past a fullback and really stretch the pitch isn't really there. Aronson doesn't really do it very well, doesn't really have the pace to do it, and Joseph very much does it for us. And I think it's very important to have that. We saw against Millwall, how kind of one pace the attack was with Joseph not on the pitch. But I do think Joseph does need to start, getting goals, but I do believe it will happen. It just depends how patient we can be with that. But I do think at this moment in time, there's no question for me that Joseph has to be the number 9 in terms of what we've got right now. He is by far our best option up there. And I still think there's a case where you can play Perot and Joseph at the same time. When Brendan Aronson's having a quiet game, there's no reason for me why you can't almost go, on paper like a 4-4-2, but effectively it's like a 4-4-1-1 where you've got Perot just behind Joseph. And, there's no reason why that can't work either, because they both complement each other's game pretty well. But as it is right now, it's working well. In terms of Perot is clearly better off the bench at this moment in time than he is starting. And Joseph is better starting than he is coming off the bench. It's a similar dynamic to the year we went up in terms of Bamford and Nketiah to an extent, in terms of when Eddie and Nketiah started, we didn't get the same level of influence as when he came off the bench. And it's an interesting one, but it's kind of working at this moment in time. Whether it will work throughout the season, who knows? But I think what I would say as well is you can never have enough strikers as well. So when we get to January, and if there is a top striker available, then why not have a look? In terms of we know Bamford has injury problems. That is the case. So we talk about having 3 strikers, but to be fair, Bamford's at this moment in time isn't kind of like a third option in terms of with his fitness and injury issues. So I don't think you can ever have enough strikers, really. Perot can always play at a 10. So there is a case for doing that. Would I do that right now? Probably not, unless I wouldn't do it unless a top option came up. What I'm saying is I wouldn't go and sign Billy Sharp for the sake of signing Billy Sharp. I'd want someone top class coming in who will fit the system and we know will kind of hit the ground running straight away. Other than that, I think Matthew Joseph is not the problem behind this Leeds team. We still have the issue of not getting enough service into Matthew Joseph. And ultimately, you have to look at the players around him. I still think Wilfried Gnonto, for all his talent, and you know how big a fan of Gnonto we both are,
I've said
really.
the same.
He's not doing enough, really, for his talent. And
Which is it's crazy because we were speaking about this before. I think he's created 9 big chances, joint most assists in the division. And it's crazy the expectation that we have for him. But, it sort of is reflecting the price tag, isn't it? He's a 25 million pound player. He needs to be getting more goals. We said at the start of the season, getting more goals. But I think that they're almost, if you get Ramazani on the pitch, it feels for me that Gnonto performs a little bit more. And that's the interesting thing with Gnonto. I don't know, even in the Premier League when he was the main man, Oscar, offensively, he was the main man. But even the production in the Premier League with Willie Gnonto wasn't maybe what we thought it would be when you actually go back and look at his numbers. I think he almost needs a little bit of a counterpart. He needs a Somerville. He might need a Rutter. He might need a Ramazani. I think that's the interesting part of Willie Gnonto. He needs almost a partner in crime going forward. Whereas, you look at maybe your Somervilles, albeit he needed the assist and the production from Rutter. And you look at maybe others in this in previous Leeds United sides, they might have been able to do it on their own. I think maybe Willie Gnonto needs that balance. I'm not 100% sure he can just do it on his own. I think that's reflected in the games that he's played, without some of the star boys.
Yeah, totally agree with that. And obviously go back to Gnonto and Sinisterra, and that year we went down in terms of had we had them on the pitch more often, I don't think we would have gone down. So yeah, there's no question about that. I think Gnonto, the type of player he is, he's not especially fast, is he? Let's be honest. He's not slow, but he's also not especially fast. So he does need. He's not someone who's going to run in behind and create space for others. He's going to be the player who takes the ball to feet and needs players around him to make space for him. And I don't think Solomon's great at doing that. I think Gnonto and Solomon want to do a lot of the same things. And I think you've seen this every single time they've been on the pitch at the same time. If you look back to, say, Burnley earlier on in the season when Solomon made the error for the goal, in that game, you had Solomon and Gnonto in the same zones, no one really breaking the lines, making runs in behind and turning Burnley around. And I felt for large spells of QPR, that was the same, especially second half. It's the same kind of theme where you do need, I think when you've got one winger who wants the ball to feet, you need someone for him to create for, someone for him to pass the ball into. And it's kind of like a decoy runner kind of in that kind of sense. And that's what Dan James and Ramazani do. And I think Ramazani is a player who you can play with anyone in that front four and you'll get output because he's just that type of player. He can find the angles to get shots off. I look at Gnonto and think, it's 3 games on the bounce where 4 games on the bounce where there's no goal or assist or really key contribution in any of the games. Gnonto's capable of far better than that for me. Far better than that. And a player of that talent can't be going 4 games on the bounce without a goal or assist or really making contributions. And I'm not saying drop Gnonto out the team at all. I'm not saying that for 1 minute, but especially when he's been on that preferred left-hand side as well, I think there's got to be more from Gnonto. I know he was on the right when Solomon was there, but when James was on the right and Solomon was on the left, it didn't really change then. So I do think Gnonto has the talent to be our Somerville and Rutter, but ultimately it's Ramazani who looks most likely to be the Somerville and Rutter, who is just relentless.
Yeah, I think so. I think, it's. I mean, right now
we're looking at. You can't imagine Ramazani going 4 games without a goal and assist. I think it's unthinkable, to be honest. At any point
I think he did.
He'll do that.
I think without Gnonto, even probably without Aronson in that pocket or Peru, I think he just cultivates something. It was interesting how he's got. I think he made in the championship as well. It's like he's in the top 5 for fouls as well, which was quite interesting. Ramazani, and it just shows that endeavour when he's getting back and putting that press on the opponent and trying to win the ball back, which we saw. Obviously, the best one was when he put Callum O'Hare into the sideline.
Exactly. And that's another thing with the system as well. I think our press without Ramazani and Joseph. And players like that is pretty poor. I don't think we're able to get the same level of pressing from that left-hand side without Ramazani on the pitch. And that's another thing where you look at the style of play in terms of Sheffield United. We look how high our back line was up the pitch. It was, I actually personally really enjoyed the way we approached that Sheffield United game. But I think if you replayed that Sheffield United game now without Ramazani, I think it'd be a lot more difficult that game, I'm not saying we necessarily wouldn't win or it'd be a defeat or anything like that, but I think it'd be certainly wouldn't be as controlled as what it was. So it's definitely a concern to me. It's definitely not a great reflection on Farke that 1 or 2 players missing. It's a little bit of a red flag, that, for me.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It does feel like that a little bit. It feels like a slight red flag.
Well, you can go back as
Unfortunately,
well to the 2018-2019 season when Buendia wasn't in the Norwich team, and Norwich made a shock. I mean, we all remember the story. Norwich made such a shocking start to the season, and before Buendia came in, they weren't looking great. And then Buendia came in, and everything was wonderful all of a sudden. That is like a bit of a recurring theme with Farke.
Yeah, it feels like that. I'm in the same boat, mate. I think it's. Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing about the Buendia saga is it felt like he was almost obviously got out of jail a little bit because Timu Pukki was there. So it was like he was the main guy, wasn't he, in that offensive structure? But overall, it's very much like, Timu Pukki when he's putting the ball in the back of the net 25, 30 times. What can you say about that, really? It's and Buendia's production, obviously, that he was the main man. You stop Buendia, you stop Norwich in a sense, but I just feel like with that man up front getting 30-odd goals, I mean, you can't compete with that. And some of the goals that season were absolutely unbelievable. And I think he did it a couple of seasons on the bounce, didn't he? We don't have that right now, so a lot of the focus is on the three in behind the striker. But yeah, I don't know, mate. I think it's. I think that for me, it needs to improve away from home.
100%.
And by the next time, I think there's another international break coming, isn't there? By the time we're there, I'd like to see us in the top two, man. I know that sounds very, very obvious, but I think we need to start having a bit of a consistent spell there. It feels like right now with Leeds United, everyone is right. Technically, we're not the best team in the league. We're not. We're not the best. We can all say that we're the best team in the league, but it doesn't matter. We're still outside. Statistically, we're outside the top two. We're on 29 points. The two above us are on 31 points. So we're not statistically the best team in the division right now. So we can talk about caliber, squad, us deserving to win certain games. Doesn't matter. You'd hope in the regular season with XG as well, with us being the top side in the division when it comes to XG. I think the top two in terms of XG against as well, that equals itself out. But overall, mate, we're 14, 15 games in now. It's a 46 game season. Now need to start putting the foot on the neck a little bit, I think.
100%. Yeah, we can't keep saying that, at some point we're going to put a run together. We do actually have to put that run together at some point, and we are a little bit lucky that there's no Ipswich and Leicester at this moment in time, but who knows? Sheffield United, I think Sheffield United are getting better and better, to be honest, in terms of they don't concede many goals. You've got Gus Hamer, Callum O'Hare's starting to play as well, by the way, low key. He's starting to really look like the Coventry version of O'Hare in recent weeks. I'm trying to think who else. Tyrese Campbell as well. So I forgot his name briefly then. Tyrese Campbell up top is starting to score goals as well. So, they've got the players there. Raksaki, you'd imagine, will refine that form from earlier in the season. So Sheffield United have got the capability to put a run together. So have we, but it feels to me like Sheffield United are actually doing it at this moment in time. They're getting the job done. And when it comes, it's consistency is the biggest issue for me. And, it has to be looked at in terms of we're not getting the Millwall aways, the Bristol City aways right. We're not getting those games right this season. And ultimately, the teams that go up win one of those games. They find a way of winning one of those games.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at right now. Norwich, difficult game away from home. West Brom, difficult game away from home.
Exactly.
Sunderland, we know what happened. Fine. Okay, Sheffield United definitely was one of those games. But I think away from home is where that character is built as well. I think, someone said, I think averaged out right now, you get to 92 points if it was something like if you drew every game but then won every home game. That's putting a lot of pressure on your home games as well. I think even in Farke seasons when he's been promoted twice before, they've had an unbelievable away record. I mean, I'll always remember on the last day of the season where they had absolutely nothing to play for. When they'd already been promoted, they went to Aston Villa, who I think had just consolidated the playoffs, and they beat them 2-0 away from home. And they were excellent that game. They dominated an Aston Villa side who was surging up, and obviously they did what they did in the playoffs and got promoted that season. But I just feel, Farke's teams, they do kick into gear in the second half of the season. I do think it's key to note, though, that I feel that this is a very, very, very different Leeds team, style, makeup than what it was against Norwich. I think that's the only thing that bothers me a little bit, Oscar. It's this constant comparison with Norwich. I understand it, but it is worlds apart. And I'm not saying they had a better side than ours, but you pick through a lot of that squad. They had a number 10 in with Buendia, who's completely unique and probably the closest thing you'll ever get to Pablo Hernandez, and probably one of, if not the best, number 10 the Championship's ever produced. They had a 30-goal-a-season striker in Timu Pukki. They had very, very different wingers. You had Todd Cantwell in there as well. Very, very different side to what we have, really. So, yeah, I think maybe that comparison is a little bit weak at the minute.
It is. And the Championship's changed a lot since then in terms of, I think you see as well, against Norwich, certainly when Norwich in that early spells of 2018, 2019, teams had to go at Norwich. I remember they beat Forest 4-3 at home and they were 3-0 down or something like that. They had some crazy games like 3-2, 4-3s, 5-4s. They had a lot of those, but you don't see that very often now with this Leeds team because teams sit in against us. They don't allow that space in behind, and teams naturally. It's not an arrogance thing. Teams will always have more respect away from home at Ellen Road than they will at Carrow Road. No disrespect to Norwich, but Leeds will always have this prestige where you get a point at Ellen Road, it's a good result. You quiet the crowd down, these different bits and pieces. So the whole, it's 6 years ago as well. It's 6 seasons ago, sorry, since that Norwich team that we saw that was fantastic that season. But it's times have changed a lot in the Championship, and obviously the gap between the Premier League and the Championship's got bigger. You got different bits and pieces, and ultimately we don't have a 30-goal player in the team. Like that.
Well, Michael said, strangely enough, and I agree with Michael. By the way, this is Leeds United and Farke's best ever start. I think we had that last season as well, didn't we, Oscar?
Yeah.
Or maybe not the start of the season, but it was Farke's best ever run.
Sort of 17, 18 games. It was looking pretty good.
Yeah. I think it was the best ever run he'd ever been on, hadn't he? Obviously, it was Leeds United. I think, obviously, we broke the history books last season, which is so Leeds United that didn't go up, Oscar. But he broke the history books in terms of, I don't think he'd ever been on a winning run like that post-January. So, yeah, there's definitely records there that he's made. But Laszlo says it's been an average season, not good, but not horrendous. Our budget, squad, and expectations dictate that the only acceptable outcome is automatic promotion. And maybe Oscar and Laszlo's right there. I think that's probably where we're all at, and maybe why it's been slightly flatter than normal at Ellen Road. The Bielsa season was extremely unexpected, wasn't it? No one knew that, and then we built that second season, didn't we? It's still relatively unexpected anyway. In terms of us, I don't know. It still felt the odds were against us. We had Bielsa, but the squad makeup wasn't amazing. We had this lad coming in, Ben White for Pontus Janssen. You're like, who's this lone player? Obviously we spent quite a bit on Helder Costa, I think, that season, didn't we? But or was that on loan? Can't quite remember. But I don't know. It still felt our backs were against the wall. This time it's very odd because Leeds' squad makeup, our budget, is something that me and you in our lifetimes have never experienced really in the Championship. It's been doldrum stuff. So yeah, it does feel right now that that the expectation and maybe the fact we're third right now is maybe splitting the fan base a little bit.
Absolutely. I think it is expectation. I think it happened towards the back end of Bielsa as well. That second Premier League season, really, the fact we never went into the relegation zone, but it always felt bleak kind of thing in that second season. But really, if you think about it, it wasn't really that bleak in the first place. Obviously, I know we were conceding goals and this and that, but it was never as bad as what it seemed kind of thing, I do believe. And there's kind of elements of that into this season as well. But I think what I'd say as well is that I made the point about when Farke has got his ideal profiles on the pitch, it looks good. I actually enjoy kind of the style of football we play. And what I'd say is at Norwich, if Pukki had got injured, he was lucky that Pukki never got injured. But I think Farke would have had the same issues with the style of play at Norwich had he not had the Pukki making the runs in behind for Buendia, scoring goals. Say if Pukki got...
By the way, that's not just him. It was... We're talking about Firpo being out. We're talking about Bogle being out. I'm pretty sure for that entire season, Lewis and Aarons were fit for about 50 games. So, it's
the remarkable run with injuries. And I think he had the same issue then in that kind of sense. Say if it had been Adam Eder instead of Timo Pukki for the whole season, it wouldn't have looked as fluid and flash as what it was. And I think when you have seen us with the ideal players on the pitch, the Portsmouth game, again, I know it finished 3-3, but you play that game 999 times out of 1,000. Leeds probably win that 3 or 4-1 probably. And then you go from that spell between Coventry and sort of like the early spells of the Watford game. I think we're playing really good football at that point, and it shows we can do that. But the reality is at this level, you're not going to have the ideal conditions throughout a 46-game season. We're going to have to find other ways to win football matches. So I think at this moment in time, and what frustrates me is we're heavily reliant on Ramazani staying fit. We're heavily reliant on Firpo, obviously staying fit, and very heavy. I mean, what would we do if Tanaka got injured? You know what I mean? What would we do? Our whole build-up is Al Tanaka, really, at this moment in time. What would we do if Tanaka got injured or had a loss of form? It'd be a big issue for us. So it definitely concerns me that we have got squad depth, but it doesn't feel like it, if that makes sense. We don't really utilize it enough for my liking. So, it's one of them that feels like the season is ultimately, at this moment in time, it feels like it's going to be between second and third at this moment in time. We might just sneak it, we might just not, kind of thing. It should not be coming down to that at all. It just feels like it's going to be a bit of a... You know what I mean? It's going to be like one of them seasons where we kind of underwhelm, but just about do enough.
Yeah,
maybe not.
I'm sort of there really, where it's I mean, you can't be really, but it's 14 games into the season, but I'm not convinced yet that we are going to finish in the top 2. I'm not yet. I need to see us really put a run together away from home, and you look at. I mean, just looking at Sheffield United, Sunderland may fall out. They may fall out, but it feels like they've dipped a little bit.
But there's a team below, by the way, who I think I did mention a couple of weeks ago, Middlesbrough. Yeah. Middlesbrough, do not discount Middlesbrough. You look at the team they've put together, the fact they kept Hayden Hackney, Morris alongside him in midfield. I think that's an excellent midfield. Finn Azaz,
and also Oscar. Oscar, their XG is very, very close behind Leeds United right now, so they're creating a lot of chances. I think Carrick, we've known, look, he's a great owner, fantastic owner in Gibson. They're going to be there or thereabouts. We know that. I think the thing with Leeds right now is it still feels in and out. There needs to be a run of form where I think it will convince, and I think that's probably where you'll see the atmosphere increase. I think that's where you'll see, everyone get to a certain level. But right now, we really need to start seeing Leeds United put in consistency away from home as much as we are at home, because right now it's very, very on and off. That's what's going to get us into the top 2 consistently. If we want to win the league, that's going to separate us. But right now, it feels like, I don't know, it's going to be a battle all season, sort of in and out, and we really don't want that.
Because it's exactly that. It's the lack of consistency. I think that's the main thing in terms of the atmosphere this season. I think when you look at the QPR game, when we walked off the pitch there, I was thinking about the Millwall game. I honestly was. I was thinking, if we hadn't messed up so much in the Millwall game, we could have easily had 9 points in the week. We could have quite easily done that if we defended the set piece properly.
Oscar, that's the same with. It was the same with West Brom. If we'd have actually fully gone for it with what we had on the pitch, we would
Norwich as well.
But it was to Norwich when we took Ramazani and Gnonto off in the 77th minute to preserve them for Sunderland.
And look where Norwich are now as well. That's looking silly now. When you look where, I'm not saying Norwich will finish that low. I don't think they will. I think they'll still be up near the playoffs.
Oscar, I really struggle with the notion where it's like right now it's unrealistic and you can't ask for too much when it comes to Leeds winning every single game. I've said this multiple times with the squad that we have. I expect Leeds to pretty much win every single game right now. It's not arrogance. It is normally, I say this, people always say, Connor, it's not played on paper. A lot of the time it is. A lot of the time it is in the Championship. You'll get a lot of teams with large budgets competing at the top end of the division and arguably going up. That is the pretty much the sole reason why the teams that come down go straight back up or go straight back up within 2 or 3 years or whatever. So right now, the expectation for me should be that Leeds go up this season. The 49ers, I think, have given Daniel Farke a really good side. However, I don't just think it's on Daniel Farke. I think it's on the players as well. They've got to start really, really taking some of these games by the scruff of the shirt, I think, and by the scruff of the neck, I should say. And it's a big second half of the season, mate.
Absolutely that. I think if you look at the actual team itself into the front four, say, for example, Brendan Aronson. Brendan Aronson has had a good season, I think, but I'm not sure he should be the undisputed starter that he is. If Brendan Aronson came out the team, eyebrows would be raised. Eyebrows would be raised. Maybe eyeballs would as well, but eyebrows would be raised. And I don't think that should be the case. I don't think anyone should have, very few players in the team should have, particularly like sort of special status in terms of if they come out, it's a big kind of like story kind of thing. And it would be if, Brendan Aronson came out the team and we tried Gnonto in the 10 kind of thing. So I do think there has to be an element of that looked at where I think it's only really your Pascal Strauch, your Joe Rodon, your Tanaka, and your Ramazani and Furpos maybe, who are the only real undisputed starters for me. I think in another world, there's a case where you could say Jayden Bogle, if he has a bad game, Isaac Schmidt should be right putting pressure on Jayden Bogle to start, but that wouldn't happen at this moment in time. So that is definitely a frustration. And there's nothing more annoying than watching a team that's inconsistent. There's nothing more frustrating in terms of getting behind things, because it's all well and good winning one week. Say we beat QPR, but in the back of our minds, we're thinking Swansea away, next Sunday could easily be a 0-0, similar to Bristol City, frustrating, annoying, slow, methodical kind of game where we don't get the maximum that we should from it. And that's the case. And the thing that really gets fans going is electric football. And when you put a run of form together, if you look at like last season, when we put that sort of 10, 11 game winning run together, that Ellen Road was unbelievable in the second half of last season, up until sort of like the Blackburn and Southampton games kind of thing. It was unbelievable. Every game you went in thinking, we could score 2 or 3 here. When we went on that run where we looked, like we're going to really easily get top 2 at one point during that run. And I think you mentioned Aston Villa before in terms of when Norwich beat them. I remember the season 2018-2019 when Aston Villa for that season were absolutely awful for 95% of that season. By the way, they were terrible. When we played them away from home, we won 3-2, came back from 2-0 down. We could have won that 6 or 7-2 on another day. It was scandalous we were ever 2-0 down in that game. Aston Villa had an unbelievable run at the back end of that season, and the whole way it galvanised the whole club going into the next season. It does make a massive difference when you get momentum, and when you win 9, 10 games out of 12, it does make things look very, very different. It does make like the other results forgotten kind of thing, if that makes sense. And I just don't think this Leeds team at this moment in time is showing the capability to do that. And we talk about Sheffield United will obviously be up there. I can't see Sheffield United not being in the top 3. I'd be stunned if they are.
No.
And then you look at like a Middlesbrough, for example. They went to Ellen Road earlier this season. They've already delivered a psychological blow, not so much in terms of the scoreline, the fact that they went to Ellen Road and were able to play football. They were able to out-football us. And even last season, in the both games we played against them, there were large spells of that game where we were very, very uncomfortable and had to really, really ride our luck in both games. So, you look at that and think, we were not invincible in this league. We should be.
I think Maz Oscar's pretty much got it spot on as well. The answer is simple. We need to take a much higher percentage of our chances. We must have the highest percentage of missed big chances in all the leagues. It does feel like Leeds are always having to create, and QPR was absolutely symptomatic of that, having to create more chances than probably a lot of the big teams. That's reflected in our XG to put them away. Really, we're not matching it by far, are we, mate? That XG, it's quite a way off. So yeah, I think that's reflected. But I think there's a lot of improvements that need to be held there. But I'll tell you what, mate, we'll leave it because we're approaching 50 minutes. One thing, mate, I did want to just point out just at the end, which it's a shame, unfortunately, but we've had Jay Redshaw, I think he's called. Unfortunately, says stuff like this in the comment section. Go on holiday with your girlfriend. Please don't say you're doing it for us. Never said I'm doing it for you, mate. This has been a planned trip that I've had for a long time, of which we are spending a lot of money on, of which we can't afford. And we're doing it a lot of the time, and things that are coming up, we've paid for in advance. So it's going to try benefit the channel, and I'm trying to get myself out there a little bit instead of just sitting in my bedroom, which we know, Oscar, can be a bit monotonous. It's not showy at all, mate. I'm trying to just, as I say, I'm just trying to branch out. It's a shame, unfortunately, mate, you get comments like that. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you can't. Damned if you don't, I should say. But yeah, I'm hoping you're all enjoying it anyway, mate. It's a little bit different, Oscar, isn't it? And sometimes you have to try these risks in life, mate.
It is. And Miami's a great city, and it's always about traveling, because you just never know what's around the corner, etc., etc. Just travel when you can.
And you know Oscar as well. I've been planning this for a while, mate. I'm trying to get some Leeds United content. There's a lot of Leeds fans out here, and I think giving them a voice is pretty important, mate. So yeah, let's leave it at that, mate. Really appreciate you joining me, Oscar. I know it's a little bit of a different time in here, but we had to get it out, mate. We had to get it out as always. It's an international break, isn't it? So we'll have a few more bits coming up for you guys. But thank you as always, everyone. It's a little bit easier with just me and Oscar because we're not rabbiting over other people and vice versa and all that sort of stuff. But it's been an absolute pleasure. Leave a like on the video. If you've just joined, you can watch the replay, and we'll see you in a bit. Cheers.